welcome back. Talking with your aging parents about money can be uncomfortable for many people. I'm a long-term care planner that guides families through the transition to long-term care. I'm not an attorney, but grab a pen and take some notes. Talking to your parents about their finances, it can be difficult and uncomfortable. However, it's crucial to address these topics before a crisis happens. I know it's not an easy conversation to start, but trust me, it's necessary. You see, when we avoid talking about money, we create risking a huge burden on our loved ones, not to mention the stress and anxiety that comes with uncertainty. It's essential to create a supportive environment where your parents feel comfortable opening up about their financial situation. Unlike the conversation I had with my father-in-law about coming home late from a bike ride. I'll tell you a little more later. You might want to start by expressing your concerns and letting them know you're coming from a place of love and care. This conversation is not about taking control of their finances, but about ensuring that they're prepared for the future. Your parents will appreciate your initiative and thoughtfulness in bringing up this important topic. You want to understand their income, their expenses, debts they might have. It's interesting when I meet with families about their loved ones' long-term care expenses. One question I always ask is, what health insurance do they have? And many people say, Medicare. Then I ask, well, what else besides Medicare? And it's not uncommon that families do not know what else their parents might have. An Advantage plan, a supplemental plan, a drug plan, a work plan. But it's important to know what else, because if your parents fall, have a stroke, some sort of surgery, they might need to spend time in a rehabilitation facility before they're recovered enough to go home. Medicare will pay for part of this time in rehab. However, if your parents are in rehab for more than 20 days, the cost can skyrocket. This is the moment it really matters what other insurance your parents have. It's also important to find out if your parents have created a long-term care strategy. What do I mean by a long-term care strategy? Have they discussed where they want to be when they need help every day? Have they created a plan for how they intend to pay for their care? And have they chosen an authorized representative to help them with their finances, healthcare? Remember to approach these sensitive topics effectively, considering with like a small conversation, gradually build up to more significant discussions. Be patient and understanding and make sure to listen to their concerns. Asking your siblings to help might make these conversations easier. Let them know you want to talk with them about your parents' financial well-being. It's important to ask your siblings what their ideas are. What are they most concerned about? What would they like to get out of this meeting with your parents? This way, each family member gets a chance to share their concerns. If there's an area most of the siblings agree on, you should consider making that area the first item you focus on. For example, if you all have noticed that mom's becoming more forgetful, start there. When you meet with your parents, it's important to remember that they are 1, adults, 2, your parents, and they need to feel like you respect them. These are important if you want to have a productive conversation with them. My father-in-law lives with my husband and I. He's 81 and he likes to ride his bike. One day he came back home later than he normally does, and I began to get concerned. I realized I had no way to know where he was, and sometimes he forgets to take a cell phone. It became later and later, and my concern began to grow. Anything could happen to him, from being hit by a car to a bike or to someone attacking him. I got to the point where I said, that's it. He's getting an iPhone. I want to be able to track where he is. I'm going to AirTag him. I do not like to worry, so I had a plan. Later that evening, when he arrived home, I shared with him, in my anxious state, the concerns about his safety and my demands he now carry an iPhone so I could track where he was. I was then told that he had left a note in his living area sharing with us where he'd went. I didn't know this, so I didn't check on it. He also shared that he did have an issue with his bike, which is why he was later than normal. However, he adamantly refused the iPhone, exerting his right to maintain his independence. But he did agree that I could AirTag his helmet to help me feel better about his bike rides. The helmet stays in his car so I could track him when he's not riding his bike as well. Now, I'm going to share with you a little bit later how that turned out to be a great idea. So the reason I share this story with you is, in the first place, I had to remember that even though he's 81, he's an adult. He gets to live how he wants to live. I can't force an iPhone on him. So you see, it's important to not to attempt to force your ideas and your opinions. It's best to try something like, I'm concerned, or I want to know the best way to take care of you. As a result, you might have a better chance of getting them to emphasize and understand why you want to gather information about their finances. The worst time to have these types of conversations is like during a holiday gathering in front of everybody, and especially people who shouldn't be part of the conversation. It's best to set aside time for those conversations, and the best time of the day is earlier in the day, especially if your parents have health issues or showing signs of dementia. If the time you've chosen doesn't work, pick another time. Try again. Don't give up on these conversations. They're too important. You can find help with these conversations in a book called Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk by Cameron Huddleston. She has 10 tried, tested conversation starters that could help you determine the best way to start the conversation with your aging parents. Cameron suggests a step-by-step approach to a successful conversation. Like step 1, choosing the right place and time. 2, explain why you want to have the conversation. Find a question to prompt them to talk or to share, like that your friend had these conversations with their parents and it prompted you to talk with yours. Schedule a time to talk in depth, not like 10 minutes before you need to leave. Start with the easy stuff. So like, where do they bank and how many accounts do they have? You don't even need to know how much is in the bank, but it's a good idea to know how many accounts they have. Don't try to do it all at once. Just create a time to have multiple conversations. Take it in small doses. We don't want anyone frustrated or just being tired of talking about it. Remember to listen without bias and to write everything down. I tell you, take notes. Find a way to make those harder conversations easier, such as the end of life planning. Learning what you might inherit is not the goal, but making sure they've recorded their final wishes is the goal. I'll put a link to the book, Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk by Cameron Huddleston in the notes. Remember, gathering this important information before your parents have a health event that prevents them from being able to talk to you is crucial. Don't postpone these conversations. You may find out that your parents don't have like the most crucial documents, such as a power of attorney, or that they're out of date. This will give you the opportunity to help them get those things updated. It's also important to gather all the relevant financial documents and have them organized. Life has a way of catching us off guard. One day, everything's fine, and the next, we're staring down a difficult decision about our loved one's care or finances or well-being. We've learned how important it is to prepare ahead of time, specifically with our aging parents. So we created the Asset Guard Organizer. It's a hands-on tool that not only shares with your family the type of care your parents prefer, it gives a clear plan to manage their finances, and ensures all of the most important documents are ready when long-term care is needed. It's a step-by-step system designed to unburden families caring for a loved one. Send me a message or make a comment in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about the Asset Guard Organizer. Now, I promised to share with you why the AirTag on the helmet turned out to be a very good idea. A few weeks ago, my father-in-law went on a bike ride, and my husband and I were sitting down to dinner. My father-in-law was not with us at the table, and I realized that he was late again coming home. I grabbed my iPhone. I looked at where the AirTag showed my father-in-law was, and I didn't want to worry unnecessarily, but guess where the AirTag showed he was? Smack dab in the middle of the emergency room at our local hospital. My husband and I got in the car, drove to the emergency room. I walked to the front desk and I said, my father-in-law's AirTag shows him right in there. They said, well, what's his name? And I said, told him, and he said, yep, he's in there. I said, we go see him. We walked back to where he was. He'd been hit by a car, knocked off his bike, and he was cut and bruised, bleeding. The AirTag was amazing. Think about it. Anyway, remember, I'm a guide, not an attorney. I have more videos on their way. So take a minute to subscribe if you want to keep track of the videos that I'm posting. Worrying about your aging parents is a difficult job. You're headed in the right direction. Thanks for watching. See you next week.